This is Lesson 6, Part 2 for Adobe Illustrator. This is more type tools and some of the advanced features that you can use with type. Going to Adobe Illustrator, I'm going to start with a standard piece of type using my basic type tools. I'm going to change my font size for this particular function. I want to make sure you see it well. Okay. Now after you have made all of your type, there's something called creating outlines that you'll want to do. You don't want to do this function until you have absolutely finished everything on your page for most type. But there are occasions when you need to start with a standard type such as this one and then do something very special with it. You can hand create a lot of your fonts with simple changes. So to do this, I want to start with a very large font so you guys can see it really clearly. I'm going to highlight my text. Now as of now, this is a piece of text. This is several letters using a specific typeface. So my object is a text object. If I go up to my type menu and I go down to create outlines, what I have now are a group of shapes. These are no longer letters so much. These are shapes, and each shape has a group of anchor points that determines that actual shape. The difference being that I can no longer type in this. I can't change the spelling. I can't add additional letters or words to this. These are simply objects. This is no longer type. Okay, the advantage to doing this is that I can individually edit my letters, and I can also apply effects, and I can do all different types of things with it. Now right now this group of objects, which happens to look like letters, is grouped as a single object. So I'm going to start by ungrouping these. Okay, so now each one of my letters is an individual object. Okay, I'm going to start with the D. I'm going to use my direct selection tool, and I'm going to edit this particular object. Okay, there's a lot of different types of things you can do. This is just one example. If you want to select more than one point using your direct selection tool, you can use the Shift key. So I'm going to select both of those this time, so I can move that whole block as a single piece. All right, so now I've adjusted this, and you can get really wild with how you edit your letters. You can certainly do some, very interesting things, but keep in mind these are letters and these are meant to be read, even if they are now, done with create outlines and they are no longer letters per se according to the program, but we do still have to read these, and their main function is still to be read. Get that back to where it was. There we go. All right, so this is just one thing you need to do, create outlines, and you can do this to edit your text such as I have here, or at the very end of your editing of a piece, you want to do this to each and every body of text, and I'll go into more detail about that towards the end of the term. Okay, once you have done some editing to your letters, you might choose to add some other effects to them. I'm going to select all my letters and I'm going to group them as a single object again. Makes it a little bit easier to work with it. And for this I'm going to go up to Effect and go down to Stylize. There's a lot of things under Stylize, such as shadows and glows. There's a scribble effect. There's all different types of things in here that we can start playing with. And as soon as you're ready, as soon as you feel comfortable making basic objects and text and things like that, I do encourage you to start playing with a lot of these different effects, because there's some really interesting things you can do. I won't go through each and every single effect. That's something which you just kind of do at your leisure. You can kind of play with them and see what you can do with them. Something else in here that you might really enjoy is the Distort and Transform. Distort and Transform can add some really interesting looks to your letters or to your objects. Let me just do one here. And a lot of these have the option to preview what it is that you're doing, so you get a feel for what your letters are going to look like or what your objects will look like. And there's all different types of settings, and it's really important that you just play with these. There are so many different tools available within Illustrator. I can't possibly show you all of them. It really takes just some playing with them and looking for a specific style or kind of feel of the letter or of the object that satisfies the need within your design. Okay, so you can click OK and kind of get a feel for what this looks like. It's kind of interesting. Makes it definitely harder to read, so again, that's something you really need to be careful with. You can always undo. We love the undo button. Okay, for this one I'm just going to apply a drop shadow. And shadows add depth to your design. Okay, the standard shadow will pop up, and you might be very happy with this, in which case you can click OK. Let me just give you one warning about shadows. This is something which confuses a lot of students. You'll see that the blur is 0.07 inches. Some people come in here and put like 1 inch, but if you do a 1 inch blur on this, then your shadow will be all the way out to here, and you won't even see the shadow anymore. But when you try to select your object, you can select right here, and it would still select it. And it gets really confusing for students. So anytime you are applying these effects, you really need to look very carefully at the blur factor. And 0.07 is like the standard size. So be very careful if you choose to put in another number there. Go ahead and click OK and have a look at what that looks like. This is just one of your options. Going to undo that. Okay, the next little trick is something called cookie cutter or color blocking. And I'm actually going to go and create a rectangle. I'm going to create a rectangle a little bit larger than my text in this case for what I want to do. Give that a color. Okay, we'll give it a stroke. And I'm going to arrange it so it sits behind my text. Right now my text is behind the block. I'm going to send that to back just so I can see what I'm doing better. This is something on the object menu under compound path. There's a couple different ways that you can do this, but this is one of the simplest. I have my text. I have it sitting on top of a color block. I'm going to select both of those objects, both my block and my group of text. Remember that text has create outlines already done on it, and it has been grouped. So now I have my color block, my rectangle, and I have the group of my letter forms. I'm going to select both of those, go up to Object, Compound Path, Make. And what this has done is it's cut through the blue rectangle to create these letter forms into the rectangle. And you can see that even further by doing something like drop shadow. Oops, except you have to have your item selected. Click OK. And that gives you a really nice little look as well. It's just one of the many techniques that you can kind of play with as you start creating your objects. Okay, anytime you're working with text, there's a couple things you do need to keep in mind. One of the worst things anyone wants to see in a really nice design is a misspelled word. Those of you who are really great spellers, you're lucky. Those of us who are not, we like going to the Edit menu and doing Check Spelling. Now, check spelling will only work on a body of text before you have done Create Outlines, so make sure that you use this early. You may also want to go into something like Microsoft Word and type out your bodies of text there, so you can use the spelling and the grammar tools with Microsoft Word. And then you can simply cut and paste it into Adobe Illustrator. You really want to be very careful on your spelling. It can really destroy a design to see a misspelt word. People's eyes kind of hone in on that misspelt word and they completely ignore all the effort that you put into your design. So do please be very careful with that. Alright, that is the end of Lesson 6, Part 2.